I'd love to start with your background and your path to becoming head of data engineering at Pinterest.
Sure. So I actually, going all the way back, I grew up in a wee village in Scotland, just 500 people. And I studied maths and physics, computer science, and numeric analysis. And when I was doing my master's, I was asked if I'd like to come and help teach a course at Stanford. And my advisor, I didn't know, I had never heard of Stanford at that point. My advisor said, I asked him, where is Stanford? And he said, in Connecticut. So I looked it up, and, the old atlases, we got the maps out. And sure enough, Stanford was in Connecticut. But 2 weeks later, he then said it was in California. So I came across for summer and enjoyed it so much that I kept on coming back here every summer while I did my doctorate at Oxford. And then I did a postdoc at Stanford. And then after that, I wanted to get into the tech world. So I went into computer telephony integration and data integration. And so I started, I'd actually IBM went back in the day in New Zealand, and then came back across here, worked for a startup, which was a B2B startup doing business to business integrations called E2Open. I was the fourth engineer there, and actually that company went IPO eventually after 12 years. And then I joined Yahoo, and that was when we were in really fast growth phase, 2006. And joined there when the data engineering was just like 50 people, and it grew to a 600-person organization. And so at Yahoo, I was actually the chief architect of all the global display advertising business. And that was like $1 billion business. But I'd come all the way through the ranks of being an engineer to a senior engineer, to then principal engineer, to being an architect. And after Yahoo, I wanted to try my luck.
As a quick aside, it's sort of amazing actually how important Yahoo has been to this whole like sort of big data ecosystem, right? Like so many fantastic people have come out of Yahoo.
That's right. And so Yahoo created Hadoop, for those that don't know. And so Hadoop was born in Yahoo, and then it was sort of spun out as a separate company. But within that data organization, things like Kafka eventually came out of LinkedIn that was based on work that we had been doing at Yahoo, and many other things had come. We were doing machine learning and behavioral targeting back 15 years ago, more than 15 years ago in advertising. And so we were the first in a lot of things, and also did a lot in data privacy at that stage, which is only now, really in the last couple of years, coming to the forefront of being important. So one of the great things about Yahoo is that there's so many people spread around the Bay Area, and probably New York as well, that have been in Yahoo. So there's a really good network of folks, and it was a real pleasure to work there. I was there for 6 years.
Great. And then you went to Twilio, right?
Well, just before Twilio, I was a CTO for a couple of startups. So first one in dynamic creative optimization. This is for advertising and web page optimization. And then I went into a startup for doing a social network for marketers. So I spent about 5 years trying my luck there. Great experience to go into a startup, but then I got attracted to joining Twilio. So I joined Twilio to be the head of the data engineering there, and then came across to Pinterest just over 2 years ago, just before the IPO, so I could join the party when Pinterest went IPO.
Good timing. All right, terrific. So I'd love to start with some news. So just today, Pinterest and your team announced that you open sourced a new a project that has been developed internally, but it's newly open sourced, called Querybook.
Yeah.
Which is a big data querying UI, combining collocated table metadata and a simple notebook interface. So what does that mean? Tell us about Querybook.
Yeah, so really excited that we've open sourced Querybook. It's used extensively within Pinterest. It's basically a human-friendly IDE, a notebook, for being able to create data queries and doing analysis and sharing of your queries. So it's actually a very simple but very powerful tool. So it's mainly used by,
just to make sure I understand. So it's a collaboration layer, so that multiple people can query the data and share their queries?
That's right. That's right. So we have this philosophy at Pinterest, well, going back 5 years ago, where a lot of the data was shared with everyone. And now we locked it down a little bit more, but you're able to go in and query many, many hundreds of tables. And so starting with other people's queries and getting some documentation around those queries is really important. So that's one of the things that QueryBook does, is you can take someone else's query, or you could just explore the tables that are available and create queries really, really easily and quickly.
Very good. And then it passes on the query to an underlying search engine or query engine?
That's right. It's all SQL compliant API. And so we query internally to Presto, to Hive, to Spark SQL, to MySQL, but you can do it with other engines too. Okay,
very good. And out of curiosity, how are you going to just promote it? Talks like these, and how are you going to create a community around this new?
Yeah, so we've already got a couple of companies that are working with us on it, and so we're looking for more engineers to join us in the open source efforts of that. So if anyone is interested, then please check out querybook.org. Anyway, you can download it and get it running within a couple of minutes. If there are any issues, just ping me, let me know. But we really are keen to share this with everyone. So.
Very good. And by the way, how does an organization like Pinterest think about open source? What are the drivers for like in this case for you guys to decide to open source it now?
Yep. Well, overall, we're a strong advocate of open source. We use open source extensively within Pinterest, and we like to give back as well. So we're often contributing patches back to other open source code, and when we can, we open source things that are not directly competitive with Pinterest, that are good for the community.
Okay. Very good. All right, so that's the big news today, the open sourcing of QueryBook. So I'd love to take a step back from this specific tool, and if you could help us, give us a broad picture of the data engineering analytics stack at Pinterest. What do you use? The various tools and the various systems.
Sure. So data engineering is we have many tools, and we can maybe cover that in a bit later. But for the analytics itself, we focus on using Hadoop and Spark. We're moving more and more to Spark now because it's faster, but Hadoop still scales really well. We have a query platform which is Presto and Spark SQL. We used to use Hive, but we're migrating off Hive to Spark SQL, so we just have the two main engines. And then we have a workflow system on top of that that's built with Airflow, which is also open source. And the way that we get all this data is using Kafka. So Kafka has clients in all of our serving systems and gathers the data from these clients and then pipes it to the backend. Now, all of Pinterest is running on AWS. So we put all of this data into S3, and it's a massive amount of data. We have more than 400 petabytes of data. And so we spend quite a bit of time putting it into different buckets and making sure the buckets are partitioned correctly so that these engines will perform at scale. Mm-hmm. We also, it's important to put it in the right format as well. And so we want to try as much as possible to put it into Parquet columnar format. For these query engines to be even faster.
Do you want to maybe for the broad audience define what Parquet is?
Yeah, it's just a columnar data format, and so like a row format would be like a comma separated values, but a columnar format you can scan through columns really quickly.
Yes. And for those of you who come to these events on a regular basis, recently we had Julien Ledem, who was one of the authors of Parquet. If you want to go back to that talk, I think we probably talked about it at some point. Very good. Do you have a data warehouse, or does everything run on this sort of big data lake around S3 and Hadoop?
So we do have a few data warehouses. So we have one warehouse that is specifically for our external metrics. These are metrics that we give to Wall Street that have to be really well vetted and validated and QA'd. And then we have
is that a Redshift, since you're on the AWS stack?
We actually use an Oracle for that, where it's a small amount of data. And then the vast amount of data we separate between what's sensitive data, and includes personally identifiable information, from the data that is not sensitive. But we also have access controls to all of this data. But all of this data is available in S3, and it is available through all these tools.
It actually brings an interesting question. How do you identify the PII? Have you built special systems to see what's sensitive information?
It's really identified right from the source of the data when it's created. So we have a schema for each piece of data that comes into our system. And along with the schema, we'll actually annotate that certain fields are personally identifiable information. It can also be that a combination of fields can become personally identifiable as well. So there's quite a bit of work that goes into just vetting whether something is PII or not PII.
Great. And then, so ultimately, all of this is for analytics. What are some of the use cases?
Actually, actually, we have many use cases. So analytics is a small part. We have, like, just about everyone in Pinterest is using it for analytics every day. But we also have a massive number of experiments running. We have got our own experimentation platform where we're doing A/B experiments all the time to try and improve Pinterest and try and improve our ad relevance. And so we have about 1,000 experiments running in parallel at any point in time. And so we're constantly iterating. So that's another use case. And then we use it a lot for machine learning. So we have about 80 different use cases of machine learning, and that's mostly from this data that comes into S3 and AWS.
Okay, I was actually going into that next. Like, what are some of those examples of machine learning? I know that visual search at some point was a really important sort of breakthrough.
Yeah, it is. And visual search it's actually, if you do a comparison between the visual search and Pinterest, so just take a photo or something, or get a picture, and then upload it and see what the results are between Pinterest and Google and Bing and other search engines. You'll find that Pinterest is usually the one that comes out top. So we're really, really proud of that. And we use a lot of the data that we've got in order to do that. So our Pinterest users, which we call pinners, are creating these boards of pictures and videos. And usually the boards have similar images within them, or at least a similar topic. And so we can use this underlying data that's been organized by all our users to come up with really, really high relevance results. And so we use it for things like classifying pins, like which is the picture, what is within the pin, so we can identify objects within an image or within a video. And we can also identify whether it's content that is safe to show our users. We want to have safe content, so we remove content that doesn't meet that bar. And we also have recommended pins. So one of the things people love about Pinterest is what they love being inspired and finding something that they enjoy, and then finding something else they enjoy, and continuing. And so being able to find these recommended pins and showing recommended pins that people can go to have a really wonderful, inspirational experience is something that we work on as well. We also have shopping pins as well, and finding related pins that, like I was mentioning before, we're trying to keep our ad and our shopping ads as relevant as the organic content itself. And so it's a kind of a seamless experience. It's not a jarring experience like with other products. So we do a lot of work on that side as well.
Yeah. The ads are particularly well done. For like anybody that uses Pinterest, it's very apparent. And that's one of the several reasons why Pinterest has been so attractive to advertisers. In addition to the fact that it's sort of the cleanest network that one can imagine, where there's no bad user comments, and in addition to people going to Pinterest with an intent to be inspired and find products that they will eventually buy.
Yeah.
So since we're talking about machine learning, what are some of the tools that are being used by the machine learning folks and frameworks?
Yeah, so in machine learning, so like 2 or 3 years ago, it was a Pandora's box. Everyone was trying out everything, and so we had with all these different use cases, people were it started to become more of a maintenance burden. And so what we wanted to do, and what we've done, is created a machine learning platform that kind of glues together the best of breed open source products out there. So we use TensorFlow from Google, we use PyTorch, scikit-learn, we use MLflow, which is from Databricks, is a registry of machine learning models. And we also have our own format for storing features within Pinterest, both for doing batch learning of models and then doing the serving of models. So what we can do is within a few hours, you could create a model, train a model, and then deploy it to our production servers with thousands and thousands of servers by using this MLflow repository.
And that framework is not open source yet, right?
That's not open source yet. So we're basically building upon. We are considering if there's interest from the community here, then we'll consider even harder whether to release it. So,
yeah, well, it's certainly a topic that's very much top of mind, right? Like this whole frameworks to create the glue between the various frameworks is something that's like a pain point that a lot of people experience.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So before we start taking questions from folks, and I see like some people raise hands. A couple more things from me. So you mentioned Kafka. Talk about batch versus trimming. What are some of the use cases? When do you use trimming in particular? Because trimming is the topic that people have been excited about for a long time, but at the same time, there's only so many use cases. I mean, clearly that's where the world is going. So I'm always curious to hear what people do with streaming today.
Yeah, so streaming for us has taken off in a big way over the last 18 months. So we basically, first of all, bring the data through Kafka, and then we use Flink for streaming the data. And then it can go to a variety of different use cases. So for example, one of the things that we do now is when you create a pin, you can actually have some analytics around that to see how many people are viewing that pin and what's the uplift. And so we have this fast creator analytics. So we go all the way from Kafka through Flink and then into Druid, and we use Druid for the real-time analytics. But in order to show a pin, we also want to make sure it's safe and that we are showing it in a relevant way. And so we have to do all the categorization of that pin, and then also filter out the pins that we really shouldn't be showing, or we really don't want to show. And so there's that whole pipeline has got like about 50 different machine learning models in itself. We're also on the advertising side. We also want to do things like budget allocation. So when you're spending an ad campaign, you want to make sure you're showing the number of ads that you've been asked to show, but not too many more. Otherwise, you're eroding your own budget. And so we use the streaming to basically do ad counting as well on how many ads have we shown for each campaign. And then we also have like a real-time ads campaign manager where you can look at the performance of your campaign and also start and stop and change that campaign. And a lot of that comes through going through Flink and then into Druid as well.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, you mentioned a number of those open source frameworks from like Druid to Kafka to Flink. Does an organization like Pinterest work directly with the open source, or are the vendors involved as well? Because Kafka has Confluent, Druid has Imply and Drill, Flink is, I guess, is part of Alibaba now. I think, like, do you because you have the engineering resources, do you take the open source and work with it directly? Open source?
Yeah, we do. I mean, we're fortunate to have the number of engineers to do that, and one of the reasons why we work directly either with the open source community or the companies that are also working on that is that we want Pinterest to be up all the time. And so if there's a problem, we want our engineers to be able to go and look at the code and be able to fix it and deploy it into production and have very, very little downtime. And so if we were dependent on a third party for that, then maybe the downtime would be a little bit longer. And we also want to develop our own features and our own capabilities that are needed for Pinterest. And so building on top of open source and then putting it back into the community is a great way for both the engineers in terms of their careers and what they enjoy doing, and then also great for the community. And it's also great for Pinterest because we stay up to date with what the open source latest versions are and get the benefits of that as well.
Great, very good. So as a reminder for people, if you want to ask a question, just drop it in the chat, and then either Jack or I will ask the question live. So that's the best way of doing it. One more from me. So I'd love to dive a little bit into the organizational aspect of this. How is the data team organized, the machine learning team organized? Are they separate? Do they work together? Is that centralized? Is that throughout the organization? How is it organized?
So data engineering at Pinterest comprises the serving part, all the online systems. So that includes the online databases like MySQL and key value stores like RocksDB and HBase. Also includes Druid platform. So we have our online systems. We also have all the batch systems and analytics and experimentation platforms. So we discussed that previously. And then the machine learning piece as well as a platform. And so we provide the glue and the underlying infrastructure with TensorFlow and PyTorch and all the other components available to our internal customers. And so with machine learning is actually distributed everywhere. We have many machine learning engineers and many use cases, and those machine learning engineers are embedded within each organization. So there's quite a few within shopping, quite a few within our advertising business, and also different parts of our product and trust and safety. And then we have a separate product analytics and data science team as well that uses all the capabilities of data engineering.
Okay, thank you. All right, I see I have the opportunity to ask more questions. So I'd love to close up with like a rapid fire, sort of like bonus question type things, which are sort of unrelated to Pinterest specifically. So first question, what new data trend or product in the overall ecosystem, so maybe you use it, maybe you don't use the product, are you most excited or even just curious about that's come up on your radar?
Well, I'd say there's three, if I have to.
Great, go.
It's hard to choose one. So I am really excited about machine learning capabilities that are being advanced very quickly, and it's great to see lots of companies basically providing offerings for improving what we do with ML, and to get to a point where we can have people that are data scientists that don't even code, that can just build models and be able to deploy those to production. So that's really what we want to get to within Pinterest as well. And so this is an area that is really hot. It's been hot for several years now and continues to be hot, and it's changing a lot. The next area I would say is data privacy. I think data privacy is really important to everyone. And We all want to have our data protected and know that it's been used in the right way, and to have more controls around your own data. And so there's quite a few products that are coming out now that are doing data privacy compliance, they're doing data lineage, they're doing data leakage detection, to help you with GDPR. And so I'm kind of excited about that area because there's a movement, I think, certainly over the last year within the US, earlier in Europe and earlier in California, but now in the whole of the US, about what data privacy really means. And, this is a big question in politics today. And then the third one is streaming. So, being able to do things in real time is very cool. So that it benefits users in a great way. If they take an action and then you can have a model that generates what they'll enjoy to see next, then that's really, really cool.
Great. Very, very good. All right, so we actually have a bunch of questions, which I just had like a mini Zoom failure where they didn't appear and then they all suddenly appeared. So let's see. Let me do this sort of real time. Where was this one? Can you talk about, to the extent there's nothing confidential, can you talk about your experience with Druid so far? How did the migration from HBase to Druid work out? Also curious if you looked into additional data stores such as ClickHouse or Apache Pinot. That's a question from Rohit.
Yeah. So yes, we did a migration from HBase. We were using HBase for analytics and for many other things as well. And so we started out with using Druid for one use case within Pinterest and proving out that worked really well. Being able to slice and dice with kind of millisecond or second latency was really good. And so it works really well for this first use case. And then we decided, okay, we're going to bring this into data engineering and be part of the platform. And then we have a bunch of other use cases. We were also starting for experimentation platform. We had so much data within our HBase cluster that it was getting really slow and very difficult to manage and overhead for our engineers. And so we decided to migrate that to Druid. And so the maintenance cost has gone way down. The latency has gone way down. The actual cost of running the infrastructure way down. So really, really happy with it.
Great. Question from Pierre. How do you observe and monitor the data flowing across these different systems and tools?
That's a great question. So there are different kinds of monitoring. There's kind of systems-based monitoring where you want to see that each system is performing well. There's also monitoring of data quality, going from one system to another to make sure that you're not losing any data along the way. And there's other kinds of monitoring. And so we use different tools for the different things. So we actually, for kind of data monitoring, you'd want something like Splunk or another kind of tool like that. We built our own. It's called Goku, and we're actually contemplating open sourcing Goku. It's a time series database, which you can do time series analysis, and so it's great for production monitoring system. If people are interested in that, then let me know, and we might consider open sourcing that. And that was based off Facebook's Gorilla compression algorithm. And so we built a time series database around it.
Very good. All right, a couple of last ones. Question from Gedalia. Can you please speak more to use of Kafka and Airflow? I guess you probably covered Kafka. Airflow as a scheduler, like do you use Airflow as such, or did you build something on top?
Well, we've done both. So we actually had an existing workflow system that was built in-house about 7 years ago, and then just over the last year we migrated to Airflow. We're still using the APIs for the existing system so that we could migrate, but we have over 2,000 workflows running in production, and so migrating that all to native Airflow was difficult. We've also built some UIs on top of Airflow. So we have one, there's some internal names here, but there's one that basically allows you to compose a workflow really easily just through like a drag and drop interface. And then we have another one for being able to take many workflows and optimize which jobs to run and when. So when you've got many thousands of workflows, you can start to decide, well, I'm not going to rerun a job in order to compute for this workflow and this one. I'm going to run it just once, and it can be used for both downstream. So a couple of tools which we're also considering open sourcing.
It's going to be a big open source year coming up.
Yeah. Well, it all depends on, I think, really depends on interest from the community. We want to make sure that there's interest there, because it's actually quite a bit of work for us to open source something, and to manage it over time. But if there's benefits and others want to chip in and chime in too, then that's great.
Very good. All right.
And so Kafka basically brings all the data into S3, and then we're doing batch workflows using Airflow. So the batch jobs take the data from S3. They're usually either Spark or Hive or Presto jobs or Spark SQL, and just process the data in every step and persist the data back to S3 along the way.
Great. All right. So there's a lot of very good questions. Maybe just one last one, which is a sort of like a different tack on this discussion. What is a pathway that a beginner should go through to become a data engineer?
The pathway? There are many different kinds of data engineer. So I think that, first of all, you need to learn probably Java and Python, or learn one of those first. And from there, you want to decide, well, do I want to become a system engineer where I'm actually building the underlying platform, or do I want to be someone who's integrating all of these systems together, or do I want to be more on the data analysis side and be more of a machine learning engineer or data scientist? And so deciding what your passion is, I think, is really important, and you should go with what you're really passionate about, because if you love something, you're going to learn it really well, and you're going to enjoy working in that area for a long time. And so based on those answers, then you decide what to learn, and that's either starting to look at open source software and choose an area that you really enjoy, or one that you're already working on within the company. You want to do a deeper dive and get into open source and start contributing to open source, or start building applications on top of the data for users, and see if you can get traction with your users, both internally and externally.
Great. On that note, thank you so much, Dave. I hope you come back as you open source more products. Like, it sounds like you have a long list, as long as the community expresses interest. So like I hope this becomes a regular thing where you come to Data Driven on the day, preferably where you announce the
of course we'll
open source project.
Yeah.
But this was wonderful. Thank you so much for spending the time and going.
It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Super interesting. Really appreciate it.